Good afternoon, everybody, and Ramadan Kareem to all of you. Welcome if you've just joined us this afternoon, this evening. This is the e-learning in schools, boon or bane subject that we're covering in our webinar today, a part of the Webinar Tuesday series that we host every Tuesday. So we're glad to come out with you. My name is Errol Govius. I'm going to be your host, and this afternoon, spending this time with you. I am the Managing Director of Pure Magic Exhibition and Conference Organizing. And we're so happy that during this lockdown period, we're able to reach out to you, come over to your homes and talk to you on subjects that are relevant to you, that make a difference to you, and that can help your family do better in these times. As we always talk about it every time we meet, these are not the best of times. These times have been thrust into our lives out of pure chance. It's not something we were prepared for. It's not something that we had been trained to be prepared for. So now that we're here, the best we can do is collaborate, work together, and come out and talk to you and see how we can help each other. Fortunately for us, in the 15 years that we've been running this event management company, we've had the opportunity to connect and work with some really, really accomplished professionals in our line of work. And today, we're fortunate to bring before you four very, very accomplished professionals in the line of education and e-learning, and we're glad to have them take this time out to spend with us this evening and afternoon so that we can have a chat with them and find out what's the best way forward in the current pandemic scenario with the COVID-19. So if you've just joined us this evening, once again, welcome you. Many of you joining from India, some joining from the UAE. That's why I said good afternoon and good evening, because I don't know which part of the world you're joining us from, but we're so happy to have you here with us. I just want to familiarize you, as we're waiting to get started, I want you to familiarize you a little bit with the control panel that you see next to you on your webinar screens. So if you see you have a control panel on your webinar screens, and in that control panel, you'll see you have an opportunity to communicate with us through the question and answer tab. So if you have a question, now, while you're listening to the webinar, while you're listening to our professional speakers, while you're listening to our keynote speakers come up there and share their views and their presentation, questions may arise in your minds. Please don't hold them back. Type them in the system and send those questions to us. At the end of this webinar, we're going to bring all our panelists back on screen. We're going to share those questions with them. We're going to direct those questions that you're sending to us to the panelists, and we try our level best to get as many answers as possible for those questions back to you. So, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget, wherever you are, if a question pops up in your mind, make sure you type it in that Q&A box there and send it to us, and we'll try our level best to get it answered. Another thing is, this is a webinar that you're watching from your side. You don't have a webcam, you don't have a chat, so we request you to stay engaged with us. Time to time, we're going to be running a couple of polls, right? Now, these polling questions, these are a way of our speakers getting to know your opinions, because they really can't see you and they can't hear from you. But these polling questions allow them to know that you're still with them, that you align with them, and that you're able to share with them. So whenever I throw a poll question across to you, I'm going to fervently request you to reach out to your keypads, reach out to your smartphones, and put in that answer and submit it, because that poll response is what helps our speakers know that you're there and you're with them. So that's the two very, very important things I wanted to share to you. Also, the third thing is we've got handouts. So a couple of our speakers have left handouts for you guys, for you to follow through and do your own work with it. So I will let you know when those are there, but they're also available, and you can see them in your drop-down menu. You can download them for yourself. So these are the few things I need to let you guys know. Of course, time is always of the essence here with us when we host these webinars. So we're around just about getting started. We're having a lot of our guests have already started coming in. Our attendees have already started coming in. So once again, I would like to quickly introduce myself. My name is Errol Govius. I am your event host, and I'm the Managing Director of Pure Magic Exhibition and Conference Organizing. We're an event management company that's been operational for the last 15 years. However, due to this lockdown, due to the COVID situation, our physical events had to be called off for the moment. Instantly, we decided, let's go back and give to our community, to you guys, and we started talking to those who we've been associated with, professionals we've been associated with it. We invited them over, and we've been doing these amazing talks with all of you. Now, besides all the speakers who are joining us, we've had webinars in the past where we've spoken to entrepreneurs, about challenges that they are facing in today's climate, especially in the UAE, what kind of rules and regulations exist that can help them. We've also spoken to employees through the Employment Challenges webinar, where we've spoken to them and told them what's it all about, what the rules that MOHRE has for them, what they can do, what kind of action they can take on a daily basis. And it has helped a lot of people. We've got some amazing feedback, and that has helped us a lot. So your feedback helps us. We're also going to encourage you to at the end, follow us on our social media handles and let us know what subjects are relevant to you, so that we can talk to our network and we can invite those kind of speakers to come across and chat with you and share with you their ideas and their knowledge. So please come back to us on our social media handles and tell us what you would like to hear from us, and we would be more than happy to bring it as part of our webinar Tuesday series over to you. So today, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for us to get started. We picked on a very, very relevant subject. I'm a father of two amazing kids. I have a 15-year-old daughter and a 10-year-old son. Both have been schooling from home from the last 3 months, and it is a challenge because in a home that is shared by myself, my wife, my kids, my mom, and all of us trying to log in at the same time, connect at the same time, doing business at the same time is not easy. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who's experiencing this, but all of you. But this is a step in the new direction. I mean, if I have to quote an amazing saying by Malcolm X, he says, education is the passport to the future, and for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. And that's exactly what we're doing. This is a whole new paradigm shift in the way education is being imparted to our children. It's very different from what we boomers were used to or what we connected to. From the playgrounds, we are now moving to the home grounds, and education is taking on a whole new look. So this is what we intend to discuss with you today. Homeschooling, e-learning, these are subjects that we're bringing up today. And we just want to get straight into it. We want to get right up and get started. So I'm not going to waste any more time. Just a quick 3-line reminder for those of us who joined us late. Your panel on the side, your dashboard, allows you to ask questions. So if you have any questions, please send them across to us throughout the webinar whenever it pops up. Second thing is we have handouts if you want to download them. Third thing is we will throw polling questions towards you. Please respond. It's now time for us, friends, attendees, ladies and gentlemen, children, whoever you are, wherever you are watching, it's time for us to bring in our very, very first presenter, our very, very first speaker who's going to come and address you. Now, I would like to share a little bit about our speaker with each and every one of you who's gathered here, and tell you why we are so excited to have him with us. Now, this amazing gentleman is the vice principal of GEMS Our Own English High School in our lane. He holds a degree in communication from the Trinity College in London. In 2014, he was certified as a leading edge digital educator by the US-based company CUE or Q, after pursuing a rigorous year-long course based on the National Education Technology Plan. Sydney brings over 14 years of experience in teaching. He works with staff, with pupil development, and he works closely with school leaders, staff, and students and parents on various school improvement projects. And that has affected even his current school's improved ADEK inspection rating in 2018. He has work experience in the ICSC, CBSC, IB, and even the IGSE curricula, and he's particularly passionate about educational technology and the potential educational technology holds to revolutionizing learning. He's a Microsoft certified educator himself, and he's currently helping to develop a digital ecosystem in his school, and he's training his teachers to become comfortable with the use of technology. In 2016, this absolutely amazing gentleman, Mr. Sidney Michael Atkins, was listed as a reading, writing, and a social media influencer by Clear.com, a UK-based influencer database. Well, his articles and columns appear frequently on educational websites, Gulf News, Khaleej Times, magazines like A Weekend and The Source, and he's also an avid social media user where he frequently promotes his passion for travel and awareness and literature and even rare disease and education leadership. We are so excited to have this amazing gentleman with us. So without any further ado, without waiting any longer, please help me welcome our very first presenter this evening, Mr. Sydney Michael Atkins. Sydney, could we have you with us on screen? Hey, Sydney, it's so good to see you. We thank you so much for taking the time out to be with us this evening. I will let you take over right now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Errol. Thank you for that introduction. And I think first off, I want to thank Pure Magic specifically for this invitation to be part of the webinar this afternoon. You know, just give me a second. So I want to especially thank Pure Magic for giving me this chance this afternoon, because preparing for this webinar allowed me the chance to sort of take a step back and reflect on all the things that I've been experiencing over the last 9 weeks or so. It's easy to fall into autopilot mode and get caught up in the doing, but I think having the chance to sit down and reflect and think about what I wanted to say also gave me the chance to examine how I really feel about everything that we're experiencing. We live in the real world and we're facing a human crisis. As much as it is a medical crisis, it's also a human crisis, and so much of what we do is defined by the choices we make, and we are at a time in which we really have to consider the choices very, very carefully before we proceed further. In early March, by the middle of March actually, almost 80% of the world had moved to having some form of a school lockdown or having complete lockdowns in place. And it seemed like of all the sectors that are adversely affected by the COVID outbreak of the year, education and healthcare were the worst affected in terms of the impact that the outbreak had had. And if you consider that carefully, you have to agree that education and healthcare are also two of those industries that have progressed very little in the last decade or so. So it's almost as if the pandemic came out of the blue for us, and then it challenged us and exposed our vulnerabilities to what we were experiencing and showed us our shortcomings. It exposed our vulnerabilities in the sense that it showed us our over-reliance on physical things, on fixture, on furniture, on building and the facilities we have and technologies that we use, when the truth of the matter is our most valuable asset are our people and the relationships they share with the children that they teach. So before I go into the points that I've listed for today, I want to take a quick poll, and Errol, perhaps you can help me with this. One of the things I want to consider and ask you, the audience, is do you feel, we're making the assumption that there is a need for a change. It's my stance on the subject, but do you feel that the current education system is fragmented or in need of some kind of change or overhaul at all, wherever you are, whether you're in the UAE or in India? Do you think education needs to change? I'll give it a couple of seconds.
Brilliant.
So that you can
So I'm going to jump in right now. Thank you so much, Sydney, for kicking it out right away and asking our audience to participate. So let's run that poll, Ashwati. There you go. So the question on your screens, ladies and gentlemen, right now is: do you think the current education systems, wherever you are based, are fragmented and in need of an overhaul? You have three choices. You can either say yes, you can either say no, or you can say you're unsure. But you have to say something, because you and I hold that valuable vote. So right now, I'm asking you to reach out for your keypads, for your smartphones, and vote in and tell us what you think, so we can share that with Mr. Sydney, so he can then continue to share his ideas on this. So let's go for it. Oh my God, amazing. We can see a lot of you reaching out and doing this. Thank you so much for participating. We need more of you to reach out and participate. So a lot of time and effort has been put in by our speakers, and this is the only way you can let them know that you're aligned with them. So reach out and vote, everybody. And there you go. It's all coming in. And let's now close that vote, and let's get the answers on screen. So the answers on screen are 84%, Mr. Sydney, 84% believe that yes, the current education systems are fragmented and in need of an overhaul. 9% believe they are okay, and 7% are really unsure. Now, ladies and gentlemen, just before I hand over to Mr. Sydney, I must let you know that due to this different kind of implements you'll be using to watch this webinar, like a laptop or a smartphone, there could be a percentage variation in what you see on your screen and what I see on my screen. So it's a minute 1% here or 1% there, but generally it passes on the right information. So once again, over to you, Mr. Sydney. 84 yes, 9 no, 7% unsure.
Thank you, Errol. I think that statistics says volume, speaks volumes for where we are as a community and how people across the world are thinking about the change that is needed in education. But this is not the first time the world has ever been at a point where they've thought that education needs to undergo some kind of transformation. In the year 2010, the famous Ken Robinson made a speech that was titled "Changing Education Paradigms." It's where I borrowed the title of today's webinar from as well. And in that speech, and I encourage you to watch it, I've put it in the handout as well. I encourage you to watch what he has to say about how education was at the time when he made the video. But he outlines for us all basically two overarching reasons why education in 2010 needed to undergo some kind of transformation. And remember, contextually, we were coming out of the 2008 global financial crisis. But the two reasons he listed were that economies of the 21st century were volatile and that nobody really understood them. So using the current education system of 2010 would not prepare children enough to take on whatever the next 10 years would throw their way. That was his first reason. And the second reason was because of the mobility factor and because people were moving across the world in exponential speeds and ways. He said his major concern was cultural implications of those changes. Would children be able to identify with their cultural context? Would schools be doing enough to take care of cultural identity in an ever-changing world, in the global village as we call it? And that was his take on the need for change way back in 2010. Here we are 10 years later, and in more ways than one, we're at the brink of another time in history where we are being asked to consider the kind of changes we need to bring about to education. And in all honesty, even though the pandemic is probably one of the worst things that has happened in the history of the human race, it has allowed us the opportunity to stop and think. It gives us, like you see on the screen, a lens, through an alternate lens through which we can view our collective experience and say, what are we doing right? What do we need to change? And what can we do to make this situation better? So for the purpose of brevity, I've brought it all down to three main points that I want to leave with you today because we don't have much time. And I'm looking at it through the lens of the golden circle theory that you see on your screen, which is Simon Sinek's golden circle theory, where he puts the why at the center, which is his most important consideration in anything, in any decision you make. You have to figure out your purpose, and then the how and the what. So the 3 points I will list for you is in that order. The why first. Why do we need to change? How do we bring about that change? And what is it going to take, or what are some of the implications of these changes that we're talking about? So the first reason, the why. Why do we need to change? Because if you look at the screen, the purpose behind why we do what we do is somewhat in question today. There's a need for, as you see on your screen, broader educational goals. And I'll give you 10 seconds to read that quote by Dr. Michael. In his paper, which I was reading again last night, he outlines for us that unless education is steered with a clear sense of purpose at this stage in our lives, no real or meaningful change is going to come about as a result of it. He believes that in the 21st century, purpose is being increasingly defined as well-being. Think about that for a second. We claim that many people believe that our education systems are absolutely fine and are working well, and we shouldn't touch what is not broken. And yet, our education systems are grossly ill-equipped to handle anxiety, to handle children's emotional needs, and to handle the complex feelings and emotions that they experience as 21st century learners. And so one of the things that is becoming increasingly important in terms of schools' educational purpose is to embed well-being of the child and of course the teachers as well into their vision for what they want to achieve. You see, empathy, things like empathy, self-care, a sense of identity, these are not easily measurable. And as a result, when we look at statistics that tell us what makes a school successful, these things don't play a very important role globally. There are some countries that prioritize this more than others, but it's not the rule. It's not the norm. It's the exception. And so really when you question what has this situation taught us, when you look at how children are experiencing the COVID pandemic from their homes with their families through distance learning and through remote learning, it's things like self-care, things like identity, things like resilience and grit that become so much more important. And that's why what I'm leaving with you today is the one of the main things that schools and educational institutions and educators need to consider is a broader goal or a broader vision for what they see education as being. Perhaps this is something that governments need to look at and state governments need to look at back in India and look at how they can change or uh, enrich curriculums in a way that takes away from the narrow-mindedness of high ranks, uh, high marks, college admissions, and move to something that is more sustainable and something that is more intrinsic to the human experience. So I'm leaving with you point number one, that there's a huge need to change our vision and our purpose for why do we educate children. If you look at 2010 and if you look at the model that was in use then, it was based on the Industrial Revolution. It was based on having people be literate. And right till 2010, that was the model that the majority of schools across the world used. And that's what Sir Ken Robinson was questioning back then. Today, we can't just take learning as it was. After experiencing the pandemic and its implications on teaching learning, it's time that everyone across the world re-examines, and you agreed with us on this. You said 84% of you agreed that it's time for education to look inward and look at how we can make that happen, which brings me to how can we make this happen. But before that, I want to take another very quick poll. Already across the world, students are learning from home. They're using technologies which you'll hear about later in the webinars. But I want to ask you, do you think all of these things that are currently happening will change the status quo? Do you think it will invert how learning happens in the future? And we'll give you a couple of seconds for that.
I'm going to jump in right here. On your screens in front of you, ladies and gentlemen, you'll see the poll coming up right now. Do you think that online education will invert the learning process? You need to select one of those three choices. There's a yes, there's a no, and there's a too soon to tell. We want every one of you to engage. Please reach out to your keypads. Please reach out to your smartphones and tell us what you feel. Do you think that this online education will invert the learning process that we are used to? Either you say a yes, you say a no, or you say too soon to tell. Let's go, people. It's very easy. Just click one of those, submit, and we'll get your answers right here on our screens. Amazing. We can see all of you participating. Thank you so much for reaching out and doing this. Wonderful. Wonderful. That's fantastic. And that's about it. Let's close that poll. We've got our answers in. And 55%, Mr. Sydney, believe that yes, the online education will invert the learning process. 9% believe no, and 36%, that's a whopping 36%, feel that it's too soon to tell. Back to you, sir.
Thank you. I think that's a realistic explanation for how we feel about this right now, because we're at the stage where we can make those changes and we can make those decisions to transform how we transact education. But the question really is, will we? Will countries use this opportunity and use this time to really consider the implications of what we're experiencing and use that learning to evolve and grow how we educate the children for a future that we really can't tell? There's an acronym that I use often. It's called VUCA, where it's a US military-based acronym which talks about the world being volatile, uncertain, complex, and really that's the kind of situation we're sending children into. How we equip them for it becomes so much more crucial to their success in the future, which leads nicely into the second point I have, which is the how do we do this. And how we do this is essentially by changing the way in which children learn. That's why we led with that question. Do you think learning styles will change? Do you think learning will change? Because how we can accomplish change is by revolutionizing the ways in which children learn. Einstein, there's a quote from Einstein that I often use. He says, you can't change the problems of today with yesterday's thinking. And that applies so relevantly to what we're experiencing, because the problems we are facing today and the ones we preempt to experience in the future cannot be dealt with or cannot be fixed by looking backwards. It takes looking inward and foresight to deal with the problems that we are experiencing. So learner agency is one of the ways in which we can change the way children learn. And I'm sure there are people sitting out there and listening and saying, but we do this. And this is something that we are familiar with. But that's not true of all schools or all educational institutions in all parts of the world, because there are many countries, China, for example, India, for example, where learning is very, very traditional. And the practices and the pedagogical approaches that people take is also very, very traditional in its makeup. So learning agency, and if you look at the top of that iceberg, it's permeated by things like voice and choice and ownership and autonomy, which are very, very accurate buzzwords in education today. Everybody's using these words. But to be honest, and I'm sure any teachers listening will agree with me, they're superficial if they're not embedded into the philosophy of the school and the ethos and environment of the learning environment of the school as well. It has to be part of your vision and part of what you want to achieve as a school. Learner agency is often misunderstood as teachers giving up control and allowing children to learn the ways in a way in which they want to. And that's partially true. We allow the autonomy to the child to learn in a way that he or she is comfortable. Children understand their strengths and their weaknesses. Children are able to set targets for themselves that they are able to achieve because they've learned how to learn. They've learned how to deal with curricular content and how to make sense of content in a way that makes it relevant to their experiences in the real world. And if you think of the traditional models that exist, the kind of models that some of us grew up in and studied under, those don't equip children with those skills. And that's becoming increasingly important as we live in the current situation as well as move towards the future. So learner agency is something that we have to consider, that makes children active participants of their learning. It gets them involved in the planning of their learning and the execution of their learning. And we've seen, luckily, because we're living in the UAE, we see brilliant examples of this taking place in some of the best schools here. Schools that have moved away from traditional approaches to more cutting edge 21st century approaches, where the child is put at the center of the pedagogical philosophy that they take. So point number 2 is the how we change what we need to change. Why we need to change it is something that all schools, educational institutions, countries, governments have to consider. The how is changing how children learn, what skills they develop, and how they're able to take those skills beyond just the classroom. Remember, true learning is not constricted by time or circumstance. It has to go beyond into their everyday experiences. And that's something we're considering more today as we do remote learning from our homes. We're looking at, what do we need to teach children? What is really essential? What do they need to carry forward in the next year or in the next 5 years? What are those essential skills that they need, rather than we need to complete a content-based curriculum or portions or a syllabus that needs to be covered for an exam? What happens when exams are taken out of the scenario and we don't even have an examination, and yet we're supposed to develop an understanding of children's skills and how they are progressing? So learner agency is perhaps the best how we can consider in terms of how we bring about that change. And finally, the point I want to leave with you, the pandemic has exposed our vulnerabilities where technology is concerned. I read a UNESCO statistic that said 72% of the world's student population have been adversely affected by the school closures. Of those 72% that are adversely impacted, only 60% have access to the internet or resources that are technological, or apps or devices that they're able to use to continue their learning. And I want to read a statistic for you. It says school closures affect the prospects of these children and their return to full normal school. Learning gaps are bound to occur where challenging young people becomes an option rather than the norm. When children don't have access to the internet, and when they don't have access to the technologies that are being used and are being used by teachers to continue the learning, it becomes a huge problem that we need to consider. Equity is becoming a buzzword today because a pandemic like the COVID-19 has thrown up this fact in our faces and allowed us to question if we have a plan in place for it. You know, living in the UAE has been an eye opener for me because this is a country that has a well developed digital ecosystem. All schools have, to some degree, a developed system where technology is integrated into the curriculum and children are allowed to interact with the technology. Uh, I think the important questions coming out of now, the longer term implications of the use of technology, focus around, which is the best technology to use. I think school leaders need to have conversations around, culling out the unnecessary and picking what is most essential. Conversations around, cybersecurity and private information of children online, and how children develop online learning dispositions have to become central to our leadership conversations. And that's really the what we need to do. So we've talked about the why, we've talked about the purpose, we've talked about the reason behind the changes that we need to bring about. We've looked at one possible how we can do that. We can evolve the ways in which children learn, not just the ways in which teachers teach, but the ways in which children interact with curricular content and learn for the skills that they will need in the future. And we've looked at what are some of the things we have to do. And one of those things is to consider the technological gap that exists in many countries like India and China, for example, where not every child has access to the internet, unlike the rest of the world. So I'm looking at my watch and I've already gone past time. So I want to sum up very quickly. The rapid changes that we're experiencing every day has affected so many of us in so many different ways. And there is so much negativity around what we are experiencing. And yet transformation is not simple. Transformation and change does not happen without some amount of pain. I think of the eagle analogy, the way in which the eagle removes its own talons and grows new ones, and the painful process that is. Change is not easy, but change is necessary. And I want to just leave you with this. A couple of years ago, when I was doing a tech PD with a colleague of mine, a teacher asked us, will technology replace me? Will technology replace a teacher? And the obvious answer is no. But as we look at the world around us and we look at the way in which technology has impacted our lives and has really taken learning to a new level over the last 9 weeks for us in the UAE, more for other parts of the world, while technology may not completely replace a teacher, it's important to understand that teachers who use technology might be able to replace teachers who don't use technology. So it's important for schools to consider what that means for them, what that means for their teachers, how it translates into development for the teachers, how it translates into training for the teachers, and for teachers to consider the implications of what we are experiencing. Because unless we adapt our styles, our skill set, if we don't build on the skills we have, perhaps tomorrow somebody else who has those skills will be able to replace us in time. I'll end with one last poll just to see where we're at and how we're feeling about this. Look at your own schools, your own organizations, perhaps the country that you are from, and consider, are these plans in place in the first place? And if they are, do they look at and do they encompass the well-being aspect, the soft skills, the self-esteem and self-worth of a child, the building of those non-academic success criteria? Does it take into consideration a change in how children learn, a change in pedagogy, a change in approaches through which we transact our curricula? And finally, do we have what it takes to make technology reach every child so that no child is disadvantaged just because the world has changed and suddenly technology is playing such a huge role in their learning. Thank you very much. I'll be around to answer any questions at the end of the webinar today.
So I'm going to just roll in that poll very quickly so we can also get a feedback on that. Are your schools slash countries ready with contingency plans that address the issues we have discussed, that is well-being or learner agency? Please select one of the following. It's either a yes, a no, or you can also say to some extent if you know of only some part of it being engaged. So let's reach out, guys, very quickly, and let's poll in those answers so we can go with that last feedback to Mr. Atkins. And there you go. A lot of you reaching out with the knowledge that you can share with us. Are your schools, countries already working with contingency plans that address the issues we have discussed? That is well-being and learner agency. And either yes, no, or to some extent. Brilliant. Let's just about now close that poll and share the answers. And the answers are 38% of our audience believe that yes, we do have a contingency plan in place and we're ready. 18% say no, and 44% believe it's to some extent. Thank you so much. We're going to go back to having Mrs. Sydney. Mrs. Sydney, I'm going to bring in my cam as well now and talk to you. Thank you so much. I mean, what you've shared with us, Sydney, is really, really an eye-opener. I mean, while listening to you, I am coming out with so many questions I want to direct towards you. I'm sure many of our audience has questions as well they would like to direct. So I'm going to once again engage and invite all our audience. I'm sure you have questions, because really what Sydney shared with us, this evening has been thought-provoking. So if you have any questions, and we would love to direct them towards Mrs. Sydney, we're going to be asking all the questions at the end of this webinar. So let them come. Please bring in your questions and we'll address it. Sydney, once again, thank you for joining us. Please stay with us and we'll bring you back in at the end with our panel discussion. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sydney. It's now time for me to invite our next speaker. Our next speaker, ladies and gentlemen, we are excited to have her back. And the reason why I say have her back is because she was with us last Thursday as well. She's an absolutely amazing human being, a very, very powerful, wonderful woman. She has a strong academic background with a master's in psychology and MBA in human resources, a diploma in neuro-linguistic programming and training and development. She's a training specialist, a life coach, a speaker, and she's most of all the founder of her own baby, which is called Thrive Training and Coaching Institute. Now, this is a training and coaching company which provides corporate training, coaching, and team building. Her educational background and her career spanning 15 years with Emirates Airlines as a learning and development specialist enables us to use her unique synergy of neuroscience, psychology, and coaching methodologies in her work. She's a creative person. She loves designing and developing customized learning experiences for companies, for organizations, for her own children. And over the last 1.5 decades, she has directly impacted the lives of more than 100,000 people from nearly 150 nations with her work in leadership, psychology, excellence in customer service, and peak performance. She's a passionate community supporter and is currently working with various different organizations and groups in the UAE to try and help, and globally to try and help with issues emerging out of these changing times. She has, at this point of time, facilitated homeschooling webinars and training programs to over 4,000 parents. We're excited to have her back with us again this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are, please help me welcome on your screens Ms. Mala Malhotra, the founder of Thrive Training and Coaching. Mala, so happy to have you here again with us this evening. Welcome back, and I'll let you take over, Mala.
Thank you so much, Errol, for an amazing introduction. I'm super excited to be with you all today. And it would be really my pleasure to share my bits and pieces of how I am dealing with homeschooling. And I deal a lot with parents because I'm also a parent coach. So putting in together my skills of a parent coach and my experience of being a mother myself, as you can see on the screen, I'm showing you my family picture here. I have two lovely kids, and this is my beautiful family, my son Arab and my daughter Alicia. So Alicia is doing homeschooling right now. So through my session today, I'm going to share some strategies and some tips, some very, very easy tips that I had to adapt to very quickly as a mother myself of a homeschooling child. Sorry. Okay, so before we start, can we have a polling question? Can you please launch the question, Errol? As a parent, what is your biggest struggle with homeschooling?
I'm going to jump in right here and help Mala with that polling question. Let's load the poll. And on your screen in front of you, a poll that will help you engage. As a parent, what is your biggest struggle with homeschooling? Now, all the parents out there, even if you're a teacher, I'm sure you're a parent as well. Is it maintaining a daily routine that's a problem? Distractions at home, is that a problem? Understanding the technology that is being used, is that a challenge? Completing all the given tasks, or your child is lacking interest in actually studying. What are these? Which one of these is your biggest struggle? I'm sure one of them is. So reach out and poll, reach out and let us know what you think. Once again, I'll read those out to you. As a parent, what is your biggest struggle with homeschooling? Is it A, maintaining a daily routine, 2, distractions at home, 3, understanding technology, 4, completing all the given tasks, or 5th, child is lacking interest in studying? Reach out and vote, submit, click, and there you go. Let's about now close that poll and share the answers with Miss Mala. And the answers are, Ms. Mara, 12% of our audience believe that maintaining a daily routine is a problem. 17% believe there are plenty of distractions at home, maybe in the work home environment due to this pandemic. 7% have a challenge understanding technology. 20%, 27% have a problem completing all the tasks. And 37% believe that our child is lacking interest in studying. Back to you.
I must say, Errol, that I'm not at all surprised to see the results, because these are the challenges that are coming out of my conversation as well with the parents. So through this session, again, I'm going to address some of these issues and pay more focus on the bigger challenges that we have as parents right now. So a lot is happening right now in our environment, as Sydney said, as you said in the introduction earlier. And amongst those many changes that we are going through globally, one of the big change, one of the big elephant in the room that we have today is homeschooling. So as parents, we are trying to balance so many tasks: self-care, home care. Yeah, in the absence of the people who, our nannies and servants are mostly not available at this time. So additional task of home care, work from home if you're a working parent, and work for home if you're not a working parent. We all work from home, isn't it? So and if you have a child who is homeschooling, it's just adding more pressure, and it's just adding another layer to the whole situation. So if you're feeling anxious, and if you're feeling a little bit like unsure, how do I deal with this right now, how do I get the best out of this, it's absolutely normal to feel that way. So let's validate that feeling of confusion. Let's validate the feeling of being anxious. So I'm going to share some tips with you today that will try and make a shift from where we are today, feeling anxious, to maybe feeling better. We are not trying to achieve perfection here, because I strongly believe, as a mother and as a lady of the house, a lot of the times we try to achieve perfection in everything that we do. And in the current situation, where our homes have also become offices, our homes have become schools, there is a lot going on in the same environment. And if we try to achieve perfection in this situation, we are going to be more and more confused and anxious and unhappy about the whole situation. So no perfection, just trying to make things work better by putting some small strategies and tips in place. So going ahead with that, I'm going to share with you 3 major broad areas. My tips will fall under these 3 areas. System, so what system we can put around the whole homeschooling bit as a parent, what support mechanisms we can activate, and what can we do for our own self-care. So talking about the system, as we've heard many times before, kids love routine. And I'm going to share a small story with you here. So a long time back, one of the mothers, she went to Mahatma Gandhi. We all know who's Mahatma Gandhi. And she said to Mahatma Gandhi, Gandhi, I have a question for you. You're such a wise man. You have answer for everything. Can you tell me, what can I do for my son who is addicted to sugar and sweets? And Mahatma Gandhi smiled at her and said, can you come back to me in 2 weeks and I will answer your question. So the lady patiently waited for 2 weeks, and she was very worried about the health of her son, who was absolutely addicted to sweets and sugar. And after 2 weeks, she went back to Gandhi and she said, now can you tell me what can I do? And Gandhi said, yes, I will tell you and I will give you the answer now. And he suggested her what she should do. So the lady curiously asked Gandhi, why didn't you tell me 2 weeks earlier? You had the answer, you knew. And Gandhi said, when you asked me this question earlier, I was myself addicted to sweets and sugar. So I don't want to preach what I'm not doing myself. I don't want to tell you something which I am not doing it or am myself addicted to. So when I say kids have a routine and parents have a routine too, I'm trying to say the same things here. So many times we want our kids to be off screen, our kids to be eating healthy food, our kids to be sleeping on a certain time, but we are not doing these things ourselves. So kids do what we do. Kids don't do what we say. And as parents, I'm sure you will all agree to that. So let's have a routine for ourselves as well as for our kids. Try to keep the routine as far as possible to the regular school and office days. Wake up at a certain time in the morning, take shower, have breakfast, do your physical activity and be ready for homeschooling. Similarly, make sure your child's getting enough sleep at night. That will only possible if they're sleeping at a certain time. If they're sleeping at random times, very late in the night, they won't have a proper sleep, and spiral effect, next morning they would be very tired and yawning all the time while they're studying. So have a routine. Make sure there is a study place, small desk, maybe any part of the house you can have that. Avoid having it in the bedroom because then the energy is mixed up. Bedroom is a place for rest, and you want certain kind of high energy when the kids are studying. So maybe a corridor, maybe in the hall, because when the kids were going to school earlier, they were being dressed up in school uniform and they were showing up at the school. So mentally, it was telling them that uniform and showing up at the school was telling them that I need to study. Now I need to have certain level of energy. So right now, with the schools at home itself, those boundaries have become very blurred. So having a study place will mean you're showing up and wearing active clothes. I'm not saying dress them up in uniform. Just make sure they're not dressed up in pajamas, because there is a concept in psychology called enclosed cognition. That means the clothes that you're wearing are sending signal to your mind that you need to be having certain output of energy. So to create that boundary between school and home, make sure there is a study place and they are also dressed up in active clothes. Lastly, make sure under the system that you are creating, you hold a wrap-up discussion at the end of the day. You talk about if the tasks have been completed, you do the grading, make sure all the stuff that you need to be sending to the teacher has all been sent. Make sure that you have some award mechanism in place. We all need motivation, whether it's adults or children. So just the way we tell our kids, if you have this vegetable, I will give you a piece of cake. So don't be afraid to bribe your kid. If it works, why not? Use it to your advantage. So have some small motivational reward system in place, depending on the age of your child, whether it's giving my little one, my 2.5-year-old one gets very excited when I give a stamp on his hand. So be it a stamp, dojo system, toys, or anything that your child really cherishes, create that as the reward system and encourage them to complete their task and to be in that routine. Another thing that I want to tell you about holding the wrap-up discussion is appreciate the effort and not the outcome. The fact that they have put in effort, they have put in time to sit at the desk and try to complete that task, that's more than enough. Remember what I said in the beginning, we are not trying to achieve perfection here. The whole purpose of having homeschooling in place is to make sure that the learning is continuous. So when they go back to school after some time, they haven't forgotten everything. So keeping that in mind, don't aim for perfection and appreciate the effort and not the outcome. Celebrate the failures as well as the successes. That will keep your child more motivated to try and do more. So the next tip that I have that I'm going to share with you is include a variety of learning resources. So I very clearly differentiate between educational technology and entertainment technology. Yes, I do hear a lot of parents saying that we don't like screen time, etc. But I'm here trying to tell you that when we were children, in our time, we were not so lucky to have all these digital tools and all these digital educational platforms that were available for us. They are really interesting. When I teach my daughter, I realize I really hope these things were available at our time. So make use of this. Yes, control screen time, because screen creates fatigue and screen emits blue light, which interferes with the sleep of the child. So try and avoid screen closer to the sleep time. However, recognize that the difference between entertainment technology and educational technology. So if you are allowing them a screen time, they might as well learn something on that screen instead of just mindlessly scrolling down or mindlessly watching a cartoon. So some of the educational technologies, you can take a picture or a screenshot of the screen you can see in front of you. These are some of the tools that are platforms that are available. Some of them, most of them are free rather, and there are loads of other non-digital resources that are available for the children. So you make sure that you're including a variety of these resources, some digital and lot more non-digital. These can be hangman, drawing, painting, science experiments, do-it-yourself projects, storytelling, role play, board games. So board games like chess, carom board, monopoly, all these board games that the kids play, they are in fact, all of these that I put in here, they are somewhere in enhancing the learning ability of your child. So learning doesn't just happen from books or from the technologically platforms. A lot of the learning that is also happening in these learning resources. So make sure you have a mix of all this. So when I talk about homeschooling, another very important factor is self-care. Make sure that you are taking good care of yourself as a parent, because if you are worried, if you're anxious, it will be completely played by your children as well. In airlines, they say when the oxygen drops, first you pull up the mask for yourself and then help others. So ensure that you are taking good care of yourself. Ensure that your children are listening to the positive language that you are using with them. Ensure that you are being calm at all times, because I feel the greatest life skill that any adult or anybody can achieve is the skill of being calm. So stay calm, don't try to achieve for perfection, and you will be absolutely fine. If they miss out a day's work, if they miss out a task, so in the polling question, one of the option was completing all the tasks. So me as a parent, I focus more on the essential tasks. So in my daughter's school, they assign some of the tasks as essential, some of them are optional. So in fact, my daughter asks me every day, Mama, which one is optional and which one is essential? So ensure that you are doing the essential tasks, because these are important for the foundational learning of your child. And for the optional tasks, if you are able to do how much ever you're able to do it, but don't stress out yourself on completing the task on the same day. That's my advice to you as a parent. If you can take some tasks to the next day, please do that. Take it to the weekend, leave it for summer vacation. Because in optional activities, sometimes the teacher gives 3 to 4 optional activities. So I have in fact, reached out to the teacher and I've told the teacher that as a working parent, I'm not able to do all these activities. Can you leave these resources as is in the system? So over the summer vacation, I can go back to these activities and do some of those. So just because the children are not going to school, don't think you are not able to communicate with the school. Whatever challenges you're facing, whatever problems that you're dealing with, whether it's related to technology or routine or completing all the tasks, reach out to the teacher and tell her. And I'm sure all the teachers out there who are listening to me today would agree that teachers are being reached out at today's time by various parents, because each of the parents' situation is different and they can tell you how you can work around this together. Always make sure that you use the language of love, because one thing is for sure, guys, when this all gets over, kids are not going to remember whether they completed their maths homework or their geography homework. One thing for sure they're going to remember is how they were made to feel, how full was their emotional cup during this time. Emotions is energy in motion, isn't it? So there's a lot of energy in the emotion. So make sure you are actually filling up the cup of love, of the cup of emotions with the good language, with a lot of appreciation. Be specific with your appreciation. Instead of saying good job or well done, try to say, I really like the choice of colors. Be more descriptive with your appreciation. It will only ensure that the good behavior gets repeated. Okay, 1 second, guys. I will. Okay, so I think, okay, I'm going to speak about the support. So when we talk about the support, make sure that you have good support system around you. So I remember this very clearly when my first child was born. Somebody gave me the advice that don't try to do everything yourself as a mother. So we only like the task that we do ourselves, isn't it? So in that manner, if you try to do everything by yourself and you don't allow others to share the load with you, and you don't communicate your needs with your family members, you're going to suffer. So one fine example was changing diapers. Somebody told me that if somebody else is changing the diaper of your baby, let them change it. If they're trying to help you with the other baby tasks or child tasks, let them do it. If you try to pinpoint mistakes in the other things that people are trying to help you with, you will end up doing everything yourself. And same thing applies to homeschooling. So if there are members in your family, grandparents, husband, even nannies, if they can, try to take their support in working around this homeschooling better. Last thing, guys, I want to leave you with by saying, when you have a wrap-up discussion with your, sorry, I'll just clear this is the last slide. When you have a wrap-up discussion with your child at the end of the day, or you're having a family discussion at the beginning of the day, make sure you are being very honest about the expectations. Tell your children that this is not a holiday time. Do not approach this as a holiday. This is we are staying at home because we choose to stay at home to stay safe, to prevent ourselves from the external environment. However, there are certain expectations in place that we must complete, that there are certain tasks in place that we must complete by the end of the day or by the end of the week. So by having these expectations in place and by having this meeting when all the family members are sitting together, it will make sure that you're all on the same page. Be very open to your children. If you are having any struggles yourself while working from home, if you feel you are being distracted by children and all of that, tell them straight away that, you know, this is the office time, this is your school time, we will take breaks and we will meet at the break times. However, this is what we need to be doing during this time. Try to also understand and identify what is the learning style of your child. Is your child audio learner, visual learner, or kinesthetics learner? And as per that, you offer the learning resources to your child. So I'm being conscious of the time here. Without any further ado, I think this is it. Just recapping the whole thing. Ensure there is a good system wherein you take care of the routine of yourself, of your child, you align it together. There is workspace and there is active clothes that the kids wear. And lastly, you hold a wrap-up discussion at the end of the day. When we talk about support, ensure you have a family meeting and you take share expectations with each other. Organize social interaction, digital dates with other children so the kids feel happy. And in self-care, make sure you're taking good care of yourself. So this is about it. I wish you all happy schooling, keep calm, and enjoy homeschooling. Over to you, Aaron.
Oh, I was muted. Thank you so much, Mala. That was brilliant. You know, as Benjamin Franklin says, an investment in knowledge pays always the best interest. What you've shared with us, wow, so many tips and tricks. I mean, we're getting messages from all across the world listening in saying this information that is being shared with them is so valuable, such great tips and tricks. And the best thing is, as an educator yourself and as a parent, what you've shared with us, the perspective that you shared with us is really, really revolutionary. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. Now, ladies and gentlemen, one more reminder, don't forget, questions are welcome, and Mala is going to be with us, coming back again at the end of this webinar to answer them for you. Thank you, Mala. Thank you so much. and I'm going to introduce our next speaker just about now. So ladies and gentlemen, don't forget, as I reminded you, and I'm going to remind you again, if you have any questions for Mr. Sydney Atkins, for Mrs. Mala Malhotra, please let them come, keep them coming in. We're going to make sure that at the end of this webinar, we're going to answer as many questions as we can. It's now time for me to bring up on screen one of our next presenters. Now, this absolutely amazing, wonderful human being, this lovely lady that we had a chance of connecting with and inviting to our webinar this evening, is a very, very experienced educator. She's an entrepreneur, and she has worked with multiple disciplines in large and small organizations, both in the UK and internationally. She has a unique background of over 15 years of experience in education, having also served as a vice principal in a past avatar with Phoenix Private School in Qatar. She has excelled and set benchmarks in leadership, training, strategic planning, business development, and even recruitment for the educational sector. She provides her current clients with a unique advantage, bringing all this experience behind her. She works with educational institutes and service-based businesses to provide online and face-to-face qualifications and training for their employees. She trains teachers in the UAE and globally. She's passionate about providing adults with an opportunity to learn, building learning communities and better working environments. We are excited to have her with us this afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, attendees all over, please help me welcome on your screens right now the managing partner of Zen Professional Development, Ms. Zen Khan. Hi Zen, so excited to have you here with us this evening. Welcome.
Hi Sydney, thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for the lovely introduction as well. Really appreciate that.
Over to you, ma'am. Over to you.
Thank you. Okay, can I have the PowerPoint on, please? Okay, thank you so much. So thank you after that introduction. Errol, thank you for having me on the event today, on the webinar today. I really appreciate actually being here, and you invited me to be here. Can we move to the next slide, please? As Errol said, my name is Zen Khan. I am the managing partner of Zen Professional Development. We are an online and classroom-based training institute, and we provide internationally accredited qualifications and training. On a personal level, I am a mother of 4 boys who are a range of different ages, so I can totally appreciate where Mala was coming from with the home learning and everything that's going on in schools today. Can I have the next slide, please? So today's session is all about motivating stakeholders and what schools can do to actually motivate their stakeholders. We're going to be talking about the uncertainty. We're going to be talking about Corona and the new normal. We're going to be discussing adapting to the current challenges and how do schools actually motivate the stakeholders. Now, I do have a planned Q&A, but I would like you to save your questions till the end, as Errol said, so we can have all the questions and answers together. Okay, so this is the Maryland Together report. I recently read this report and it basically talks about the uncertainty and what will happen to schools and the support students will need once schools actually reopen. This period is difficult, especially for students, parents and educators who are the stakeholders in the school. What was once an industry that was secure and stable is now facing a new normal. Everything is being done online. We have students in lockdown. We have so much going on, and it's becoming a time that's extremely challenging. Can I have the next slide, please? So how can schools actually help our stakeholders adapt to the current challenges? Going back to the VUCA acronym that Sydney was speaking about, this acronym sums up the current situation. The period of volatility that's going on, there's a rapid change for everybody. There's a rapid change for parents, for schools, for students, and there's so much uncertainty. There's uncertainty about when schools are going to reopen. There's uncertainty about how many cases of corona there has been. There's a lot of conspiracy theories And the complexity of the case, the governments are divided, you know, in regards to what they should be doing to actually support, you know, to get people out of this pandemic, and the actual acceptance that life as we once knew it has now changed. And is becoming a really big challenge for everybody. And going back to motivation, it's hard to stay motivated when you have such uncertain times. So the period has been difficult for everyone, and the data that's being published is really, really interesting to read. And I want to get as much information about this report to you as possible. So recently, McKinsey, they actually published a report about this pandemic. And the report highlighted that this pandemic not only caused a loss of thousands of lives globally, but also caused an economic shock. And it's the worst economic shock that we've seen since possibly World War II. The GDP for most will be affected between 8 to 13%. And it's really important that schools scenario plan for this, as it will have a direct impact on enrollment numbers and the school revenue, which will also have an implication for all stakeholders. And going back to the point of motivation, staff will only be motivated if they have job security. You know, students will only be motivated if they know that their school will be reopening on a certain day, and parents will only have that motivation and that peace of mind once they know that their children are learning and the learning is of a high standard. Global stats from this report also indicated a lowering of daily reported cases, which indicates that the first wave of the coronavirus is lowering, and in some cases flattening as well. School leaders and governors as well, they are well aware that decisions made must be well informed and based on key information such as statistics, trends and views. This is why at the end of this presentation, I'm going to share the reports, the links to the reports, so you can actually have a look and read them for yourself. According to multiple sources, such as the IMF's World Economic Outlook, the economy will contract 3.5% in 2020 amid the pandemic, but it's also expected to grow. And in comparison to 2018, the economy in Dubai has actually shrunk by 0.8%. If COVID-19 leads to an 8 to 13% reduction, then it will also affect schools directly. So what does that actually mean for us all? Well, that means that the uncertainty may get worse. With Corona, you know, where it is at the moment, it's become challenging to actually know when this pandemic will be over, and to put an end date to what is going on. So what this causes is actually demotivation for all stakeholders. And again, going back to my previous point of the acronym of VUCA, we're in the VUCA state. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, so this period is a period of fear. It's a period where people are feeling overwhelmed, and they're feeling uncertain. They're feeling that they don't have a purpose, there's no goals, they're living life without the intent, and there's no clear direction from the school leaders or from any government leaders. So taking this challenge into consideration, have you thought about what would actually start to demotivate your stakeholders in your schools? We have parents that are feeling overwhelmed. They're working from home, they're actually teaching from home, they're managing home lives, and it's becoming a really big, stressful situation for everybody. And with no clear direction on when this is going to end, I know in Dubai we're starting another period of lockdown. It makes you feel overwhelmed and it makes you feel vulnerable. So this is why most stakeholders are feeling demotivated. They don't know what to expect. They don't know what is coming next. Can I have the next slide, please? As a school leader, you must provide a clear direction. Sydney also mentioned earlier that you need to have a contingency plan. What plans will you put in place if schools do not open? How will you motivate your stakeholders? How will you ensure that the students are supported? How will you ensure that parents have that support in place? And how will you ensure that your staff are not feeling demotivated? Schools must deliver the best outcomes and continue delivering the home learning as a high standard of learning, and not just a basic a basic session where students are just ensuring that learning is continuing. They need to actually benefit. They need to see the value of this e-learning. Your parents, your teachers must see the value of this period of home learning, because we were all looking at technological advancements and what would happen in the future. Well, here we are. We've been faced, it's been thrown at us, or we've been thrown at it head first, and we had to either sink or swim. And a majority of schools are actually swimming, and they're learning to adapt to this situation. You need, as school leaders, you need to understand the needs of your stakeholders. Speak to them, communicate them, make sure that you're on the same level with them. And you need to focus on the well-being of stakeholders, especially their mental and their emotional well-being. School leaders need to make actions and take actions that take into account not only the medium-term needs of the business and of the school community, but also the long-term business objectives of the organization. Can I have the next slide, please? So for this webinar, I wanted to provide some data about how people in the UAE, or how stakeholders in the UAE are currently feeling. We wanted to find out exactly what schools are doing to motivate their staff and to motivate their stakeholders as well. Errol, can I have the poll, please?
Absolutely. Let's run our first poll for Ms. Zen. On your screen in front of you is the poll, everybody. And the question is, what do you think was the highest demotivating factor? Is it working or learning from home, which is the highest? Or is it the lockdown? Or is it something else that bothers you? We want all of you to reach out right now to your keypads in front of you, to your smartphones, and tell us what, according to you, has been demotivating you. What is making you feel terrible inside? Is it the fact that you have to work and learn from home? Or is it just a lockdown that's bothering you? Or is it just other things that are troubling you at this point of time? So let's have the votes coming in, everybody. This is a poll. This also means this is the time for you to reach out and engage. So we want your attention, and we want to make sure that you're engaging with us and aligning with what Ms. Zen is sharing. Wonderful. We're getting all of you voting in. Thank you so much. That's really brilliant. A few more coming in. And wonderful, wonderful. There you go. Brilliant. So let's just about now close the poll. And the results are, Ms. Zen, 33% of our audience feel that working and learning from home is the highest demotivating factor. 43% are really disturbed with the lockdown, and 24% feel just other things are bothering them right now. Back to you.
Wonderful. So thank you for that. Thank you for participating in that. And I'm going to talk about what those surveyed by us, what the results were shortly. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay. So during this survey, you probably saw this survey on our social media platforms. It was flying around WhatsApp at some point last night, so we could get the full data. So we want to survey 100 people. We managed to survey around 95 stakeholders in the UAE. Over 45% of those that we surveyed were educators who actually worked in school. So the results that you will see today, and that will be published in a report that we're going to send out, are actually based on what the educators who are working in the school and the parents and a few students are actually doing to stay motivated. Can I have the next slide, please? So we asked participants, what have you done to remain motivated during this period? Over 48% of those surveyed said they had focused on family life. Now, that's an interesting dynamic to this, because when we all went into lockdown initially, the worry was, well, how are we going to manage? How are we going to work from home with everything that's going on? I myself personally have a 2-year-old son, and Dubai being the way it is and my businesses being the way they are, I was engrossed in my work, I was running around. This period actually gave me an opportunity to reconnect with my baby. So I'm thankful of this period for that reason, because my 2-year-old actually flourished during this time. It's also given me a time to actually look into what the teachers are teaching my child, whereas before we would look over the books but we wouldn't actually look into them. Now is the opportunity that, well, now we've had the opportunity to actually look at what the teachers are teaching, but how, not only what they are teaching, but also how they are teaching it. Can I have the next slide, please? So we asked those surveyed, what has your school done to help you stay motivated? Unfortunately, we were shocked to learn over 70% of those surveys of those surveyed said the schools had not done anything to help them stay motivated, which is a real shame, because now is the ultimate opportunity for schools to showcase their services and show their stakeholders that this is how we support our community. So this was quite upsetting to see, and I'm hoping after this presentation and after we publish the report, this will change. Can I have the next slide, please? So we asked we asked those completing the poll, what can your school do to help you stay motivated? Some of the things that the stakeholders said was health surveys. They can help with their development. They can help them focus on skill-based activities. They can make phone calls home. They can have regular meetings. They can make more efforts. They can set activities as families. They can collaborate. They can do reading exercises. So there was quite a bit of data that we collated in terms of what people wanted from their schools. Can I have the next slide, please? So here are 5 steps to help your stakeholders feel motivated. And this is for school leaders, but as parents, we can also use these tips at home to motivate yourself and to motivate your family and your children. So involve stakeholders when making decisions and ensure regular communication at all times. Ask stakeholders what are the challenges that you are facing. Provide a platform so you can all come together as a community and talk about the challenges that you're facing. We can't shy away from this. The mental health, the well-being of people is being affected from being locked down in the house. You know, I know I run a webinar for mums, and we have, you know, many mums who are business owners, and we were always discussing how, you know, as nurturer, as the mum who wants to be perfect, when we try to do everything, and unfortunately perfection and everything is not possible at this time in our lives. So you could communicate with stakeholders by offering surveys. You can call home regularly, online meetings. You can ask stakeholders what are their expectations, what are the expectations that they're placing on themselves, and what expectations do they have from the schools, and provide support and guidance where those expectations are actually higher than expected, or you have the means to do so. So if you have a school counsellor, if you have a school psychologist, let them reach out to the parents, let them be you know, the guidance for the parents, or, you know, for the students to actually help them. Let them be the guidance for your staff. You know, if you have teachers who are suffering from stress and anxiety, let your psychologists, let your counsellors help and support them. Provide a network of support for stakeholders so they are not isolated. And this also includes the school leadership team. We often forget that the principals, the vice principals, the school leaders are directing the school. They are the one that are motivating everybody else. Who motivates them? Who helps them with their well-being? Have regular well-being calls home to your stakeholders, be it staff, be it parents, be it students, and make sure that you're turning these barriers into motivators. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, so in summary, the impact on the education industry during the pandemic has been tremendous, especially for students, parents, and educators who are the stakeholders of our schools. The education industry has adapted to a new normal and moved away from traditional methods of education, and this has made us all feel uncertain and out of our comfort zones. Stakeholders are feeling demotivated, fearful, and uncertain, and it's time to take control and provide a support network for them. School leaders must provide clear direction, communicate regularly, and turn barriers into motivators, and make sure that those in your community are feeling supported. Can I have the next slide, please? Some useful documents for you to have a look at, and this will be available either as a handout or it can be requested after this session. I will share the full PowerPoint with you. So here, there's some really good reports on here for you to actually have a look at what's going on, not just in the UAE, but around the globe. Can I have the next slide, please? We can skip this one because questions we'll do at the end. Just a little bit about what we do. So we offer online training courses and qualifications. Do feel free to have a look at our courses. There's some links on there as well. Can I have the next slide, please? This is our contact and location. The website is there and an email if you want to connect. And can I have the next slide, please? Do follow us on social media. I'm also on LinkedIn. Please do reach out. Let me know your thoughts about the presentation, and it would be great just to connect with you all. Thank you for today, and thank you for listening to my presentation.
Wonderful, Zen. That was so interesting what you've shared. You know, one of the things that came to mind is who is watching out for the leaders. That's really powerful what you shared. You know, and it's true, but the stakeholders, the leaders are expected to make sure that they've got the stakeholders in mind, but who's watching out for them. So really, there's so much that you've shared, and there are questions already coming in. And ladies and gentlemen, attendees, I encourage you to keep asking those questions, because it's going to get us set on a course of discussion that can actually help you get some really pertinent answers. Thank you once again, Zen, for joining us this evening. Please stay with us as we come back to a panel discussion. God bless you so much for taking the time out. Thank you so much. And let's bring on our next speaker, ladies and gentlemen. Our next speaker is an absolutely brilliant young man. He's the Vice President of Spiral Click Web Technologies, and it's really important why we have him with us on today's webinar. And as he comes on board, I'm sure you'll realize why we decided that we had to have Mr. Sam join us. Sam is based out of Dubai. Sam is a very good buddy, and he's been in Dubai for the last 8 years. He's passionate about delivering engaging web-based marketing solutions. He helps companies communicate their brand, and he's heading spiralclick.com, which is a Dubai-based website and app solutions provider. And Mr. Whitcomb and his team has been providing wide range of digital solutions for educational institutions, training companies, entrepreneurs, SMEs, and well-known regional brands for 8 years. You know, the most sought after projects that Sam and his team are working on at this point of time are e-learning or LMS or learning management systems, and they rapidly responded to this remote work and play, learn from home environment by launching their very own e-learning and e-LMS solution, which is, you know, it's a platform that literally they had it up and running in weeks after the COVID-19 coronavirus stepped in. So we're happy to have Sam with us. Sam will be telling us on how the whole e-learning and the e-learning environment or the future of e-learning and how it's going to be needed to be an engaging online experience. Sam, over to you. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, Sam.
Thank you so much, Errol. That's a very kind introduction. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for Pure Magic and Ticket Magic for inviting me as well. So everyone, thank you for attending. My goal today is really to inspire and excite you about the future of online education. Some of you may be a little bit anxious or unsure about the future of online learning. It's completely fine, because it's very new for a lot of us. But this may be the new norm. If it is, then we need to start planning and putting a plan in place of how we can continue to provide a fulfilling education to our kids, but now on an online environment. So first, when I got invited to this, I asked myself, why am I allowed to speak to you about e-learning and predominantly e-learning 2.0? So as Errol said, we do have a technology solutions company, but the other reason why people wanted to talk to us is for our consultancy about transforming this shift from classroom training to online training. The reason being is because 17 years ago in 2003, I used to work as a courseware developer back in Australia for an aviation college, and we're building courseware for online as well as classroom environment for high school graduates who are going into the aviation engineering industry. 17 years ago, the e-learning management systems, which are the systems that we use for online learning, were in its infancy. But even back then, 17 years ago, we were able to create really engaging online courseware. Today it's matured a hell of a lot more. So to create high quality training for the online environment requires massive amount of man hours. I know this from the experience, but the immediate and dramatic transformation that has just taken place in the education sector has forced us to adapt in merely weeks, not years, to transform the way we deliver training from classroom to online. So my question is, are we still maintaining the same quality of education? So this leads me to my first poll for you all. How would you rate the current quality of e-learning that your kids are getting? Firstly, below standard, a lower standard of education compared to the pre-COVID-19 lockdown. Same top, but different. So we've got, it's a different learning environment, but it still remains the same in the quality of education, or better than before. So the standard of education that your kids are getting now are even at a higher quality and more enriching than they were when they were at the school campus. So over to you, Errol.
I'm jumping in right now. I'm right, guys, on the screen in front of you is your first poll run by Sam. How would you rate the current quality of e-learning training? How would you rate the current quality? Is it below standard? Is it maybe just the same but different in terms of quality, or is it getting better than before? We need you to engage, guys. Reach out for your keypads, reach out for your smartphones, and tell us what you think. Your opinion is valuable. Your opinion counts. And that's how it helps our speakers to design their presentation towards you much better. So let us know where you stand with this. How would you rate the current quality of e-learning training? Is it below standard? Is it same but same by different, or is it better than before? And we're getting all our votes coming in. That's brilliant, everybody. Thank you so much for reaching out and connecting and sharing your views. And let's about now close the poll and share that information with Sam. So Sam, 13% of our audience believes that it's below standard, 43% believe same by different, and 45% believe it's better than before. Over to you, Sam.
Interesting. Thanks, everyone. Super interesting. So to start with, here's some big thinking ideas. It's super new. We've only been doing this for a couple of months, right? But so there's not a huge amount of facts out there, but we're already getting some great data. So you can see here we've dug up some incredible research from KPMG, UNESCO, Washington Post, also Gulf News. There's plenty of articles about the e-learning topic. One that I found really interesting, you can see from KPMG, this is just to put into scale what we've achieved here. 1.53 billion learners around the world have had to convert and start to do education at home from the school. 184 countries worldwide has banned kids coming into the school campus. It's just massive. So that's 91% of the student population globally. Now, while you're looking at the other quotes, let's just stop for a second and think back. We haven't had a chance to stop and think, but just take a moment to think back to 25th of February. If you remember, KHDA informed us that of the 1st to the 15th of March, we're moving the Easter break forward 2 weeks. And then from the 15th of March onwards, we're now going to start learning from home. So in reflection, this transition, this transformation could be the biggest transformation that the education sector has seen in 100 years. And it happened in days, not years. We did this in a matter of 2 weeks. It's crazy to think about, and we deserve a pat on the back. So what is e-learning 2.0? I actually coined the term myself. At the moment, we're in e-learning 1.0, which is now. So it's basically we had to respond. Like I said before, 2 weeks we had to respond quickly and adapt to the homeschooling shift. This forced us to use the current systems that the schools had in place. We don't have time to implement a new system when we have 2 weeks to start educating our kids from home. So they had to use what they had in place, which is typically Seesaw, Zoom, PowerPoint, YouTube. The question is the quality and the standardization still there? Obviously, teachers had they're less efficient because now they're having to do more development of the lessons online. And that's because they don't have the right tools. They need a learning management system, but very few schools have that in place. The majority of schools have Seesaw, which is great, but it's not a proper learning management system. Schools are adapting at the moment because it was a really reactive response. So therefore, how effective is the e-learning that our students are getting currently in the online environment? Is it engaging? Marla's poll was super interesting. 37% said that there's a lack of interest in the study. So possibly the engagement levels aren't there, but it makes complete sense because we have to adapt in 2 weeks. So now let's move forward. Let's start thinking longer term now. What if this is the new norm? We've got the e-learning 1.0 in place. What's happening now post COVID-19? So while we've got e-learning 1.0 rolling on, let's start planning, let's start implementing, let's start strategizing a longer term e-learning strategy, which includes putting in a proper e-learning system, creating more engaging courseware materials, and putting in some standard operating procedures for online learning. If we have the proper tools in place, we can create much more high quality courseware with better tools, and then therefore teachers aren't spending time on the administration side of creating courseware on the fly. This will also result in higher engagement from our students. It's going to be easier as a school to manage because we've just got one centralized system to manage all our teachers, students, and courses. And possibly, this might even be more profitable for schools as well. With these learning management systems, we can add as many students as you have, really. So, my next point, e-learning 2.0. What's the ingredients for success? Before I do, I've got my second polling question. So here's the question. As weeks become months with homeschooling, how will mindset shift? Now, blended learning. Do you think the future will be blended learning, but predominantly at home? So a physical campus at schools kids will still go to the physical campus for schooling activities, such as maybe sporting events or major exams and assessments, but the majority of education will continue to be done at home through the e-learning. Will it be a blended learning predominantly at school? So attending the physical campus every day, all day, but now all the learning will be delivered through this one centralized e-learning system, which could be an app or tablet. That's completely doable. Or 3, parents changing their mindset about schooling as a whole. Maybe they don't see the value of it, and maybe they might look for more of a fixed term as doing schooling life as homeschooling. There's a number of homeschooling educators out there that are predominantly focused on that homeschooling program. So over to you, Errol. Let's see what the results come out.
All right, I'm jumping in right now. Let's have that poll run up on the screens. The question which Sam ran with you is, as weeks become months with homeschooling, how will mindsets shift? We want you to reach out and poll. We want you to reach out and vote right now. You believe that homeschooling is going to be more affordable, or you believe that blended learning or predominantly at home only, or blended learning predominantly at school? What will be the mind shift? So come on, guys, reach out and vote. We want to see you guys vote and tell us, what do you think? What do you believe will be the right way to go, or what might really work in the future? We can see a lot of you reaching out. Thank you so much. Come on, guys, reach out for your keypads. We want you to vote faster and engage with us, and reach out for your smartphones and tell us what you feel. Doesn't matter where you're sitting in the world, the system affects us all. So your response really helps us understand better where we stand. So there you go. I think we've got a lot of our votes are in. Let's just about now close that poll and share the answers with Sam. Sam, 23% of our audience believes more affordable homeschooling, 23% more affordable homeschooling, 34% believe blended learning predominantly at home, and 43% believe blended learning predominantly at school. Over to you.
Okay, cool. Very interesting. So it's a real mix there, really, isn't it? Let's see how it plays out. So here we go. Ingredient number one for a successful e-learning 2.0. Firstly, we need to focus on creating engaging online courseware. This is the absolutely key aspect that we need to be focusing on. While I'm going to go through this, there's a little video of some engaging courseware that we've built in the past. So here we go. If we create thoughtfully, then the online e-learning experience can be very enriching. If not, then obviously the e-learning outcomes will never be met. Creating the very best courseware for online learning environment is the #1 priority. If not, we've absolutely failed as educators. So we need to focus on putting a structure in place, putting a strategy in place to create and convert this courseware from classroom courseware to online courseware. It doesn't just happen on the fly, and it definitely doesn't happen just telling teachers go and create a PowerPoint with and use YouTube to upload your videos. Like this is e-learning 1.0. We need to move forward to e-learning 2.0. Ingredient number 2, we also need to use a powerful centralized e-learning system. We've got great content, but we need a great system to manage it all. And that's not just managing the courseware, but that's managing our students, grades, certificates, progress, engagement, everything in one tool. That tool is web-based, it's tablet, and it can be run through an app as well. So here's some images of the app. Just like I was saying before, you can do everything. It's in one platform. That's what a proper LMS or learning management system provides. Now here's a video. Errol, just tell me if it doesn't play. It should though. This is showing the future. This is what can happen when using a LMS. So this brings me to the last section of my presentation. I called it the future of e-learning. I struck it off. I said the future is e-learning. I'm so behind this, and I think this is the future. But are teachers and parents ready? One thing's for sure, your kids are. They're very tech savvy. Technology is ready, as I'm showing you, going to show you in a second. And society was forced to make this change as well. So let's embrace it. So here we go. Here's we've got another poll. Before we move on, I want to find out how challenging will it be to implement e-learning 2.0 into your school. First answer, very easy, less than 3 months. Typically for small school educators, small amount of courseware, or maybe we don't have a system in place. A medium-sized project could be a medium-sized school with less than 1,000 students. A big system upgrade, integrating your other existing systems, could be hundreds of teachers and thousands of students. There is one other one here as well, which I forgot to add actually. This is for anyone out there who actually isn't involved in the education sector, then maybe you should, just hold off from voting in this one. Over to you, Errol. Let's see.
Let's jump in with that poll. Right now, we're going to have it up on your screen. Now, how challenging will it be to implement e-learning 2.0 into your school? As Sam shared earlier, what is e-learning 2.0? I'm sure you've paid attention to that. Is it going to be fairly easy, less than 3 months to implement it, or is it going to be 3 to 9 months, or is it going to need a big system upgrade, which would normally take 6 to 18 months? In the given time that we have, you need to tell us, where do you stand, or where does your school stand as a parent or as a teacher or as an educator? on this webinar at this point of time. Your response, your opinion is very valuable to us. So come back and tell us, guys, and we can see a lot of you are voting. That's brilliant. It knows, we know that you have a voice here. Wonderful. Great. And there you go. It's all coming in. We can see everybody reaching out and voting, sharing with us what they feel is the right answer. And let's about now close that poll and give it. And the result is 30% of our audience feels it's going to be fairly easy. It might take less than 3 months. 43%, which is a whopping 43%, believe it's going to take 3 to 9 months to get this up and running. And 28% believe they would need a big system upgrade, which might take 6 to 18 months. Back to you.
Cool. Thanks, Errol. For us, this question was really just a poll to see who our audience is here today. So that's super interesting as well. All right, on to the next slide. So the future is e-learning. So I wanted to just give you guys some inspiration and to see what is possible with e-learning. So this is, I hope you enjoy this. Here we go. So video instructor-led learning. Now this may be pre-recorded video, or it may be a live Zoom style video conferencing call. Both are fantastic. For our clients, we highly recommend focus on the video instructor-led learning. If it's self-learning based and you're obviously not in front of a lecturer, so this is probably the most engaging type of courseware if it's self-learning and self-paced online learning, or obviously the live Zoom conference calls are super effective as well. The other benefit about this is it's really quick to create because we just stick an instructor in front of a camera with a bit of a green screen, which has added a little bit more of an engagement where we can put the courseware notes behind the instructor. The next one, this might blow your mind, virtual reality classroom learning. So let me play this video for you. I've just put the audio down mute. I've had a few meetings in this Vibella, it's called, over the last few weeks. Super interesting and super different to what we're doing right now when it comes to online learning and training. Here you can see that all the participants are avatars. So we don't actually get to see the actual face of the student or teacher. You can see here, they've all got, and here we go. So we're creating our own avatar here. It's super customized, so you can make it look like yourself. And then we go around the campus. You can see here, there's a big presentation here, maybe by the principal. Everyone can attend. We can pull them in. There's a full campus, which is completely customizable as well. Obviously, classroom training here as well. We can walk around the campus. We can play soccer here, virtual soccer. In Australia, so we call it soccer. And we can, and in the classroom also, they can do all their courseware through the e-learning platform in a virtual desk as well. You can see here Stanford University is using this as well. Social learning, so the LMS system should be full of all these other features as well to make it more of a collaborative tool where we can message each other, communicate, video conferencing, instant messaging. So this is something else which is we can expect to see with the future e-learning 2.0. Gamified learning. So let me play this little video. This is a game which we created back in the day. This basically shows it's game-based learning improves the learner's engagement levels, automatically increasing their knowledge retention rates and enhancing their learning processes. This is why LMS systems offer gamification elements such as fun educational quizzes, scoreboards, and encouraging friendly competition. So you can see here, this is a drag and drop game. You've got a number of attempts and your actual final score. You can see here, we'll just fast forward to the end of the game here, where we're dragging most of the equipment in place into the aircraft. Once it's dropped in, we've got the scoreboard. You've got your overall score. You can play again or continue on to the next activity. Micro learning with MOOCs, so massive online open course companies. You've probably seen some of these, such as Coursera, Udemy, Udacity. It's huge. We've got 900 universities already using these platforms. You've got 110 million students registered and plenty of courses. So I think one takeaway to take away from this microlearning, studies show that 2-hour-long lessons should be broken up into 4 lots of 30-minute long sessions. These chunks can manifest into video lectures, interactive activities, and many other applications. The reason being is it's faster retention, and the attention span of especially our younger kids is very short. So this is the formula for success for your teachers who are creating courseware at the moment. If you want to take it another level for your e-learning, you could even look at integrating artificial intelligence into your LMS system, your learning management system, which can predict other courses or micro-learning courses which the student may be interested in based upon the courses which the student's already done. Think about that. Comes to my very last question, everyone. Which technologies do you think will be the most helpful for the new era of e-learning 2.0? A lot of these that we'll just discuss now. Errol, I'll hand it over to you.
I'm jumping in then. Let's run that poll on the screen. Which technologies do you think will be the most helpful in e-learning 2.0? Is it going to be centralized e-learning management system and an app? Or is it going to be virtual reality classroom learning, or AI lead adaptive personalized learning, or gamified learning, or none of the above? What do you think? Maybe there are some kids there and we can help our parents also to understand this. So reach out there and vote. What do you think will work best with your kids? You may know better what they're engaging in and what might really excite them. I know maybe my son loves gaming and he would love maybe gamified sort of learning. So reach out there, people, and vote. We need to see your votes, everybody. Come on, let's get your votes in. Which technologies do you think will be the most helpful in e-learning 2.0? Is it centralized e-learning management system plus app? Is it virtual reality classroom learning? Is it AI lead adaptive personalized learning, gamified learning, or none of the above? Wonderful. Thank you so much, everybody, for voting. And let's share that vote with, let's close the poll and share the results. And 24% of our audience believe it's a centralized e-learning management system plus an app that will help. 41% believe a virtual reality classroom learning would be interactive. 6% believe AI lead adaptive personalized learning. 29% gamified learning, and 0% say none of the above.
Wow.
Back to you.
That's super exciting. How cool is that? None of the above got 0%. That is so cool. So I guess you guys can see the value of e-learning and also e-learning 2.0. We need to make great courseware. We need to focus on creating great courseware. And as you can see, there's a whole bunch of tools out there now which can assist us so our teachers can really just focus on creating the courseware, creating a great educational experience, and not having to worry about the tools that they're using to create that, especially when a lot of these teachers have to do it on the fly. So to wrap up my presentation, I just wanted to read out the quote from the Assistant Director General of Education from UNESCO. He said, "We need to come together not only to address the immediate educational consequences of this unprecedented crisis, but we must also capitalize on innovations and gather important lessons to use of technology at this unprecedented scale to move to a new normal." I think we really are in the new normal, and we now need to start focusing on creating the best content for this new normal too. So thank you everyone for your time. Hope you found this beneficial. I'm happy to share the presentation with you afterwards. Over to you, Errol.
There you go. I'm back, and thank you so much, Sam. That was really, really interesting what you shared with us. Let me get my webcam up and running, and there you go. All right. So very interesting. Though the information shared could come across as technical, but yes, absolutely right. It is the future. It is where the industry is heading, and it is what the stakeholders that Zen spoke about. Each of us, the educators, the parents, the kids, everybody needs to get involved, needs to understand what will make that learning experience, brilliant, what will make it more engaging. So thank you so much, Sam. Truly engaging. Welcome. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Stay with us, Sam. Don't go away. I'm going to bring in all the other panels right now. So Sylvester, help me bring back Ms. Dane Khan, Ms. Mala Malhotra, and Mr. Sydney Atkins. And it's time for us to get some questions going, everybody. Thank you for staying with us during this whole webinar. You've been very kind to us with the time you've spent with us. I'm just going to start going straight into these questions. We've got a lot of questions that have started to come in, and I would like to bring them out one at a time. So here's one of the first questions going towards Mr. Sydney. Mr. Sydney, can you enlighten Sadia Mehmood, who's with us? Sadia Mehmood, who's with us, wants to know what is the contingency plan? Is there going to be a good, what are the areas for a school to think of as a contingency plan? What do you think?
Firstly, thank you, Sadia, for that question. I think Sam alluded to it slightly in his message just now. There has been no precedent for this in the world. This is the first time we're experiencing something like what we are going through, and so there's no set format for having a contingency plan. Really, the format is what you experience and what you can preempt intuitively, as well as through research and through what is happening around you. But I think the three broad areas you can start with are the three broad areas your school would have to function with, which is academic, which would also include the social emotional aspects of what you do every day, the physical aspect, how do we distance children, how do we ensure that the right health and safety measures are in place. Everything changes in such a situation. Like, I was talking to somebody on a podcast last night, and he said, what happens when we have a fire drill? How do we maintain physical distancing during a fire drill where everybody is just running out of a building to get out to safety? So I think the physical aspect would be one of it, and also the administration part of it, because you've got to look at how to keep in touch with key stakeholders, how to keep in touch with parents and corporate governance and regulatory authorities. So I think those would be the big areas to start with. And then through your own experiences, you would have to fine tune and find other things that you would like to prioritize in your planning, but there is no set format.
Thank you so much, Sydney, for that. A question for Ms. Mala. Ms. Mala, e-learning, the e-learning time that we parents tend to, while doing e-learning, we tend to compare our kids with other kids, and we feel stressed out and worried that maybe our child is not putting a better job or doing a better job of putting, and we end up putting all the pressure on the child. How to deal with that? This is a question coming from Radhika Natarajan, and Mala, if you could be kind enough to share your thoughts on this.
Thank you for the question, Errol. It's a great question, and a lot of our parents, we go through this trying to be better than the other child. And just realigning back to my presentation earlier, perfection in this situation is equivalent to misery. So if you're a parent who's trying to compete with other children, who's trying to compete in terms of performance and scores, that's not the strategy that you should follow right now at all. It will only lead to more pressure on your child and frustration for yourself. So each child is very unique. Try and understand what is the learning preference of your child. As I said earlier, whether your child likes to learn by listening, is an audio learner, visual by seeing, or kinesthetics by doing. Try to see if your child is a right brain learner or a left brain learner. Right if he likes to do more artistic things, left if he's more methodical and analytical. So when you observe these things, you would be in a better position to offer learning resources to your child which are aligned to the learning preference, and that will boost up the performance of your child. However, still, I must recommend to you that do not compare your child with other children. Everybody has their own journey. If you try to recall back in your school days as a parent when you were a child, what do you think about your classmates right now? Who's doing what? So maybe the backbenchers have become the front benchers, and it's the other way around, isn't it? So think about your own school days and do not pressurize your child. Thank you.
I want to thank you, Mala. That was so enlightening. I want to jump in here and ask Sydney or Zen, do you guys, being educators yourself who spend time with kids and parents and teachers, what do you think about this whole peer pressure to succeed concept?
There's a huge pressure on children nowadays. There's a huge pressure on adults nowadays. And I talk about this regularly, about social media and the impact of social media on our lives, now more so than ever with what's going on in the news, the peer pressure, everything that's going on. There's a huge emphasis on this peer pressure, and there's a huge amount of stress that's being placed not only on parents but on students as well. So it's something that parents will have to teach their kids about. They will have to educate, the schools have to educate their students, and they have to make sure that there's an awareness about the impact of peer pressure on our students.
If I can just
Sydney,
add,
what do you think? Sorry, Sydney.
I think it's natural for parents to want their children to do better, and in many cases, comparing them to somebody else gives them some sort of a benchmark to which they can assess if their child is progressing or making progress the way they think they should be. But I think that's what we talked about in the learner agency part of my presentation, where we've got to change the mindset to thinking about what is important to the individual child, and them understanding their own targets and understanding their own areas for development becomes so much more important. So when parents understand and accept that different children have different targets to achieve and progress at different paces, when they see those children making progress towards their individual targets, they will understand that their children are making progress irrespective of how somebody else's child is doing. So that's why learner agency is so important. Individualized learning is so important, because one size does not fit all children, and we should not hold them to that standard, because they're individuals with different learning styles, like Mala talked about, and different learning needs.
Thank you so much. Just a quick note to Sam before I go to the next question. Sam, there are a couple of questions that have come directed towards you. Since you were our last presenter, I've forwarded them to you. Do go through them before I come back to you. And let me ask this question to Zen. Zen, there's a question that's come up here saying, how can we make sure that leaders are kept motivated and guided? I mean, we can, Mr. Arukya Rajshekar here feels, he understands that we concern about teachers, parents, and students, but is there any way we can devise a way in which leaders could be supported and even somebody concerned about their well-being? What do you think about that, Zen?
That's a good question, and thank you for asking that. The KHDA recently started an initiative for principals to go to these. They went out to, I think it was Oman, Hatta, and they had these retreats where they could connect with each other on a personal level. So, you know, regulators, governing bodies, regularly checking in on their leadership is really, really important. Now, where we do student surveys, where we do parent surveys, where we do staff surveys, why can we not do leadership surveys to check the mental well-being, you know, health surveys on our school leaders to help them with their own emotional and mental well-being? Because being at the top is really, really hard. It's very, very isolating. You know, you have no one to bounce ideas off. You don't have a support network. So governance and regulators need to make sure that they have steps in place to monitor the health and the well-being of their leadership.
Thank you so much. That was very interesting. Let me now ask my first question to Sam. Surekha Nair wants to understand what are the apps that are useful for teaching science. Would you have any knowledge about that, or do you, if you're not familiar, maybe we could also ask the other teachers. What do you think, Sam?
Definitely, it's a great question. What I was talking about more so was providing the tools for education, for either creating it or delivering it. But if you're looking for apps which are great teaching tools in regards to science, then I think at the moment, because all schools are running their own courseware for science, I'd highly recommend to go one of the MOOCs, the massive online course companies such as Udemy, Coursera. There's literally tens of thousands of courses there, and they're credible courses as well, because they're credible companies that have been around for over a decade. So I would recommend at the moment, unless your current school is providing that, I would most likely recommend to go to there and have a look at the ratings and the reviews that those courses have got as well before purchasing them for your kids in the classroom.
Can I just comment on that one?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so there's the Khan Academy, there's BBC do a lot of, a lot of resources. You need to make sure that that what you're teaching your children aligns to what the school are also providing. The best point of call for you to find out which apps to go to is your school. Speak to your teachers, see what they're using, and align what you're doing at home with what the school are teaching as well. That would be my advice.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Very quickly. My slides played a bit funny earlier when I was presenting. I wanted to show a slide and tell you guys that since I've done loads of webinars on homeschooling so far, I happen to create, on the demand of parents, happen to create a learning resource WhatsApp group where parents share learning resources with each other on various subjects across the globe. So we have over 100 parents right now already in that group. I'll just say out my mobile number. If any parents want to join that WhatsApp group, just message me and we just share learning. The only objective is sharing learning resources. So
well, that's a wonderful initiative.
Thank you, Errol. 056-2218-214. Feel free to send me the message. It's a community of all the parents and educators sharing learning resources with each other. 056-2218-214. And my social media handle is Thrive Upwards for Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, etc. if you like to connect to me later. Thank you, Errol.
Brilliant, brilliant, Mala. I think that also your response also actually answered one of our other attendees' question, who said, "Do you have any online material for commerce subjects which are not found anywhere? Can you suggest sites for this?" So Shamala, Ganapati, if you can jump in and join that group, I'm sure there'll be other parents who might have an idea about that. Mala, since you are with us and you were the last person answering, here's a question for you from Raghav Mimani. And Raghav wants to know, he says, regarding the screen time, do you think setting up screen controls will be helpful, especially when work starts back again, parents are going to office? What do you think about that?
Absolutely essential. I 200% recommend having screen control in terms of the amount of time your kid is spending on the screen, number one, because it leads to fatigue levels, it emits blue light, it disturbs the sleeping pattern. So make sure you are controlling the screen time. That's one side of it. The second side of this is ensure that you have e-safety tools and devices in place. As the children grow older, they get very tempted to get swayed away, when they're watching a YouTube video and some other video advertisement just pops in, and they just get very tempted to go and check that out, and that can have a damaging effect on the innocent brains. So make sure that you are using these e-safety tools that are in place. There are many. I know there's something called Net Nanny. There's another one called Family Premier. There is a YouTube Kids version in place. There is a blocker that can be placed for Google Chrome, etc. You can actually give the iPad to your child with only selective apps that you want the child to access. Nothing more than that. So by all means, parents must do that.
Thank you so much, Mala. I have a question that's going out to, one moment, let me, so this is a question that I don't know if any of our panelists would feel comfortable answering, but I still want to throw it across because it's coming from Deepa Premakumar. Now, Deepa says, special needs kids do not show the positive response or the interest to learn through e-learning especially. Unfortunately, as a parent or teacher, both the ways, she needs to know what is the best that can be done to help these kids. And I think it's a very relevant question. If somebody can help out with Sydney, do you want to take it up, or anybody else? Or Zen would like to say a few words, and Sam as well. So let's start with Zen.
Yeah, so special educational needs children, they need to have, their learning differentiated more so than anybody else. Now, is she a teacher or is she a parent? That's one question that was she raising the question from a teacher's point of view?
I think both. So, it's both parent and child.
So for teachers, we actually have a special educational needs course that's online that you can actually take, and that will provide some resources for you. We also have some free resources on our resource hub for teachers to go on there, and they can actually download, support documents for special educational needs children. Now, as a parent, I know some schools, what they're doing is they're providing specialist lesson plans for children who have special educational needs. So they may not, those who cannot access e-learning, they may have given them a home working pack. I actually work with a school in Dubai that's actually given all their students home working packs. This was prior to the announcement that they weren't allowed to do that because the children were unable to access the e-learning platform. So, like we just discussed earlier, don't put that pressure on children. If they cannot access the curriculum online, then provide alternative lessons, alternative resources for those students.
Can I just add something to that,
yes,
Errol? So that's an interesting point. That's an interesting question that has been raised because that's not been our experience in the last 9 weeks. In fact, we've seen children with determination thrive once we move to the e-learning platforms. But I do want to make one distinction. There's the scare that because of the importance of technology nowadays, there will be an overload of technology and apps on children, and that can be particularly daunting for somebody with special needs. So I think both from the parents' angle as well as from the teacher's angle, we've got to figure out what is most essential and what does it help the child achieve. Using technology for the sake of using technology is not going to get us anywhere. But if you use targeted apps and targeted resources and softwares that help develop skills or help children who have children with determination reach their IEP targets, then those are the things that they will see progress in, and they will be less worried about using. So if we're overloading them with technology and apps, it can take away from what we're trying to achieve with them. So it's important to cull away what is not really needed and focus on what is making the most impact on them. There are, for example, reading resources like Lexplore that is incredibly good at what it does with children who struggle with reading. But any app can be modified and used if the purpose is clear behind it. So if you want to cut down on a child's writing, there are apps for that. But you have to figure out what you want to achieve and then use the technology. The technology is just a tool. The pedagogy has to be very, very clear in the mind of the teacher as to why she or he is doing what he or she is doing.
Sam, do you want to add on to that technology perspective, buddy?
From my side, from the technology expert side, so unlike Sydney, I'll be talking from the technology side, which is a different perspective as well. 2 points. One, a number of the LMS or learning management systems, happy to say that they do have a lot of accessibility features already in place, which is brilliant news. But something more locally, you guys can Google this yourself. The Dubai Smart government last year brought out a very extensive document, which is the accessibility guidelines for websites and apps. They brought that out. It's around about 50 pages long. It's super, it's huge. I mean, they're covering everything there. So I would recommend follow that. The education sector is one of the sectors that they want to see this rolled out in. And a lot of those features are somewhat built into the different browsers, but there's a lot of features that aren't. So if you follow that guidelines, it's going to satisfy a lot of the various special needs.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sam. I have Preeti Sanju has a question directed to both Sydney Atkins and Mrs. Malhotra. She would like to hear both their views. One is, sitting beside the child during e-learning, is it a good thing or a bad thing? But that is with parents not prompting any answers or getting tempted to answer. So that's the first aspect. Second thing is, a child who develops emotional bonding with their parents sitting next to them, will the child be independent enough after school reopens? I think it might have to do with the age of the child, but Mala, Sydney, what do you think? Who wants to go first?
Errol, that's a very relevant question. Even before the COVID-19 came in, there was a parents-teacher meeting like approximately 4 months back. And when I was discussing with the teacher and I asked as a parent, what can I do to support the learning of my child? One thing that the teacher told me that very much applies to today, before, during, or after COVID, try to make your child independent as much as possible. As parents, we need to make sure, now that schools have come to home, we need to make sure that we de-school ourselves. We are enablers and not teachers. So if you stick to being next to the child all the time, you are not only able to do your own task, and you are also making the child very dependent on you. Of course, this very much depends on the age of the child. How much instructions can the child understand from the activity that the teacher is assigning to e-learning. But as far as possible, it's a journey. It won't happen overnight. As far as possible, try to make your child more and more independent. You assign a task, you break away, do your own work, come back in half an hour, come check how the child is doing. If they are stuck with something, slowly, you will see that the child will be on their own. And that is the stage that you really want to achieve as a parent.
Sydney, what do you think?
So I'm smiling because in the first week of remote learning, we had a lot of that. Parents sitting down with their children and trying to get them through the day. And it was interesting to see the teachers' reactions to seeing parents instead of students online. But like Mala said, I think independence is key to learner agency as well. It's about children developing the confidence and the skills they need to work by themselves for themselves. Having said that, I think there are some groups of people, some groups of children that could benefit from some parental involvement. For example, in the kindergarten years, motor skill development is such a huge part of what they have to learn and practice at home. So some parental involvement there is perhaps necessary. Similarly, with students of determination who don't have access to learning support assistants anymore, people who would work with them individually during a classroom context, they don't have that kind of support anymore. So with the right kind of guidance and training from coordinators and Senkos in their schools, parents can play, pivotal roles in helping children to some extent. But like Mala said, to a large extent, it's better that they leave the children alone.
Okay, I'm gonna direct one more question towards Ms. Zen. We're really running out of time. This has been brilliant, but Ms. Zen, you spoke about earlier well-being. So how Marie Joy Tagliaccord wants to know, how do we implement these well-being policies? I mean, how do you recommend we should implement these?
What, the policies for the staff or for the students?
I think both ways. What do you think?
So well-being policies in staff for staff in schools are all about being focused on what your staff are doing and what the school is doing to support staff well-being in the school. So the policies actually highlight, okay, these are the initiatives that we have in place, to where we focus on staff well-being. These are the steps that we have in place. These are the surveys that we do every year. So the well-being policy should highlight that. But having a policy is one thing. Making sure that your staff are aware of the policy and that policy is being implemented is another. So again, it's up to school leaders to make sure that their staff are actually following that well-being policy, but they're also checking up on their staff. And that's about building relationships with your teams and having that openness and that culture of well-being in your school. And it's the same for students as well. KHDA issue a survey every year for staff well-being, for student well-being. Take that data from the year before and use it to improve well-being in your schools for the next academic year. Now, when it's a period of home learning and everybody's working from home, is you can check well-being by making these phone calls, like I said earlier, by communicating, by ensuring that platform is available. There's educational psychologists, there's counselors in school. A majority of these services that are available to the school are not being utilized. Get them on the phone, get them doing these webinars, to provide stakeholders with the support that they need, and put that in your well-being policy, because your well-being policy that was before Corona is very different to your well-being policy during Corona.
Thank you so much, Sam. That was brilliant. I have a question going out to Sydney and Sam, and I would direct it to Sam first because it's a little bit. It's two questions coming out, and I try and see if this is our last question for this evening. So the question is, it's two questions from two different people. I'm trying to combine it. From Khadija Farhana. Khadija says, gamified learning would be a great choice for my kids, but isn't that going to make them glued to the screen for hours, which obviously could present potential health hazards in their lives in the long run? That's one question. Now, Candida also says, will gaming advancement help students shape themselves towards the profession they choose in the future? So, Sam, if you could take a lead on answering this one, what do you think?
I'm so pleased that Khadija asked this question, and Errol as well, that you brought it up, because I think in that poll that we did, the virtual reality got the highest score, which I think it was 64%, I think you said, everyone is super interested in this. It's 64% out of all the different e-learning 2.0, that got the highest score. Muller, and her highest score was 37% for the lack of interest in the study. And also 84% with Sydney's was the education needs a complete overhaul. So, this is really different thinking of education, the gamifying or the virtual reality. So it's a completely opposite issue now. It's super stimulating, right? So it's super engaging instead of lack of engaging, which is a great problem to have. So if you are, I don't think you should be scared away, especially because kids love this virtual and gamification and playing games as a whole. So simply, my answer here is just to make sure that you put rules in place for learning in a different environment, whether it's e-learning in the current systems, whether it's gamification, whether it's virtual reality. You still need to, as a school, put the rules in place of how the students use that platform, just like you have in the actual physical school campus. That's it for me. It was a great question, and I encourage you to look into it further because it can be a lot of fun. I think at the beginning, you can see it when I went into it firstly, I was super excited. It was a little bit gimmicky and like there's some fun stuff that you can do, but I think the gimmick side of it wears off, and then you get into the actual education side of it. And you do have controls as a teacher to pull people into rooms, and then, you know, during lunch break, there's outdoor campuses like the soccer field or like closed seating areas where you can have private conversations. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty fun. And, you know, this is one way how you can really get away from the lack of engagement. So I think it's just about schools, just like what Zen said, putting standard operating procedures in place and then following those procedures for using this new environment.
Brilliant. Sydney, would you like to add to that?
So I'd like to assure the two ladies that they have nothing to worry about immediately. I've been in Dubai for 12 years and I know exactly 3 people who've experimented with gamified learning. I'm one of the 3. In 2013, I used Minecraft to teach English language, and I had 30 parents writing to me and saying, what are you doing? And ultimately, I was able to, through the research, and I wrote a blog post about this, which I can share with anybody if they like. Ultimately, the learning objective, what I had in mind, was achieved, and children were able to do the pedagogical goal that we had set out for ourselves. They were able to achieve the actual learning outcome. So again, I want to re-emphasize, whether it's gaming or an app or an LMS or a MOOC, technology is just a tool. And you use it in the same way you would use any other resource. Like Sam said, have the rules in place, have the guidelines in place. Children should know how to use it responsibly and not overuse it. But technology is just a tool. So I think the important thing to look at is, if it is being used, is it achieving the kind of desired impact that it was used for? And if that's available to you and you can see it happening, then I think there's nothing to be afraid of.
Good answer.
Brilliant.
Can I just add to that?
Would like to say something. Please add.
Yes.
Please add.
I'm just going to quickly add to that. In terms of screen time and parents being worried about screen time and how long these kids will, or how long the kids will be spending on these games and on this virtual learning, there's an actual app that you can have from your telecom provider where you can turn off the internet on devices. Do that and turn off the internet on the device, and you'll have total control over the screen time.
Oh my God! I hope my kids are not listening into this, because this is something. So here's an open question to anybody. How do you make your 8-year-old child realize that she has to behave exactly how they will in school and not take the home environment for granted? That's a question for Preeti, to anybody who would like to take it up.
Good luck.
I think, Errol,
Zen?
Go ahead.
when we talk about creating a support system around you, I think it's essential, depending on which part of the world the parents are joining in today. We've already been in homeschooling for some time, so if you haven't already done so, extremely important to share expectations with each other as family. Do not consider this as a holiday time. If the approach is that this is holiday period because we are at home, that's a very, very dangerous approach to take. So we need to communicate to our children, in a family meeting to start with, and on daily basis to tell them why we are indoor, what's the impact of outdoor that we are indoor, and why we should be following certain rules and we should be completing certain tasks. As I said, bribe your children if you have to. Tell them what could be the consequences. We need to give certain amount of anxiety and stress to the child. That's called eustress, the positive stress that allows them to perform better. So if you have to be honest to them and tell them they won't be going to the next grade if they don't study, by all means do that.
I think the important and expectations are very, very important. Having a structure is very, very important. But having flexibility within the structure is as important. I completed my master's degree online, and I assure you, I did not attempt it the way I would have attempted it if I were at university. So allowing, because now schools are going to take both synchronous and asynchronous approaches to the next few months. So allowing children the flexibility, because they've got other things going, they've got complex emotions to deal with, they've got friendships to deal with. So within the structure and within the expectations, there has to be some room for flexibility as well.
Zen wants to say something. Zen, do you want to end with this?
Yeah, so I have a 5-year-old and a nearly 3-year-old, and I know when it's time to stop learning. And at that point, I am the one that sets the rule, and I say, right, I don't think you're ready to learn, so I think we'll leave this. And then he will say, no, I want to learn, I'm ready to learn. Or we'll take a little walk around the garden, and we know you can't enforce this upon a child. We have to be flexible. We have to learn when our child is ready to learn. We can't push this on our children. We can't enforce them to sit down and say, okay, now we've got, you know, live lesson at 9 o'clock, sit down, you have to, because they won't. They'll do it at their own pace if they want to. We do it at that time. If not, we pick it up later in the day.
Sam?
Just to follow on from what Zen was saying, when she said that she's got a 3 and a 5-year-old, and good luck with the online learning with them too, because I hear it from a lot of parents, it's a real challenge. And so from a user perspective and a technology provider, we're doing a study at the moment to have a different, same LMS system, but a different user interface. And even the courseware is really, you guys know it's different courseware, but I think the system and the length of courses, everything is a little bit different when it comes to the younger children, where the attention span is much shorter as well. So I think it's not one size fits all when it comes to the e-learning for the future. I think you really need to break down not just the courseware, but also the tools that you're using as well for those different age groups.
Brilliant. I would like to bring up on screen right now our social media handles. And Mala, if you could just do us the favor of repeating that WhatsApp number you mentioned earlier, if you could just repeat it for everybody.
Yeah, sure. I'm already getting some messages on my phone, so I'm repeating myself now. 056-2218-214. This is a learning resource sharing group from parents across the globe, and including the educators. We just share learning resources with each other.
Brilliant. I'm gonna say thank you to our speakers. First of all, it's huge gratitude from us here at Pure Magic, the team, for you guys to take the time out to be here this evening and sharing all this information. Now, to all our audience, we have received a lot of questions that we've not been able to answer. So this is what we normally do, is that we send these questions to our resource people and we try to get an answer from them and then send it back to you. So please, on your screens in front of us, you can see our social media handles. In case you've missed out getting a social media handle directly from our speakers, please feel free to follow us and share your valuable comments or suggestions or any questions that you have for our speakers, and we'd be more than happy to get an answer from them for you. We thank you all for coming. We thank you, our speakers, once again, Sydney, Mala, Zen, Sam. Amazing session. I mean, this could go on and on. We've got so many questions, and you really spent valuable time enlightening us. Thank you so much for the time spent with us this evening. We bless you. We wish you Ramadan Kareem, then especially to you. Eid's on its way this weekend. So all the very best, and please pray for us in your du'as. And to everybody, Sydney, Mala, Sam, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Arrow.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Thank you, audience.
Our pleasure. So as our speakers take their leave, I would like to speak last few words to our attendees. We would just like to let you know, guys, somebody asked us earlier on this evening, how do we engage well-being in the family? So guess what? Our next webinar in the upcoming Tuesday is a webinar about well-being. And if we have that on screen, Sylvester, can you bring it up? We would like to let you know that the next week, the next Tuesday, under Webinar Tuesday, we're going to be covering health and wellness and what is really right for you. So we've got a mind coach, somebody who talks about energies and mental well-being and meditation. We're going to have them come on. We've got an amazing nutritionist, an accomplished nutritionist coming on, telling us how we can ensure great nutrition for our families during this time that we're spending at home. And third, we've got a fitness coach who's going to be coming on, talking about how you can do basic, simple things at home to stay healthy, to stay well. So if you spend this 2 hours with us, we thank you for taking a little more than 2 hours, but we do hope that this section has been valuable to you. as Pure Magic Events are concerned, our drive is to bring subjects to you that are relevant, try and get you answers, and we want to make sure that we can get across to you. Now, for many of you who have missed this webinar or who joined it a little later, we've got great news for you. The news is that this entire webinar will be re-telecast. It will be re-telecast on Facebook and on YouTube. So please look for us, Pure Magic Exhibition and Conference Organizing. Well, let's bring back that social media page once again, Sylvester. Look for us on Facebook, add us up on Facebook, add us up also on YouTube. You'll find us on YouTube, and we are going to be re-telecasting this. So you can actually, if you found value in this and a close friend of yours or somebody you know has missed out on it, please share them the link so they can go back and watch this and learn from the valuable experiences that have been shared by our speakers. So it's going to be re-telecast on YouTube, re-telecast on Facebook. Please follow us on both these places so you will know when we're going live, and we're going to be re-telecasting this. Thank you once again to all our attendees for joining us. Once again, thank you to our speakers, Mr. Sydney Michael Atkins, Vice Principal of the school in Alain, for the time at our own English school. Thank you so much for joining us. Also, Ms. Mala Malhotra, the founder of Thrive Training and Coaching. We had Zen Khan, Managing Partner, Zen Professional Development, and Mr. Sam Whitcomb, Vice President, Spinal Click Web Technologies. Thank you all for joining us this evening. It's been a wonderful evening and a wonderful time learning and educating ourselves. My name is Errol Gobius. I'm going to be signing off now, wishing you a wonderful iftar. If you're Muslim and you're going to be breaking fast, please pray for us in your prayers. Please pray for this lockdown to end and for us to get back very, very soon. God bless, and I'll see you again next Tuesday as we do another round of our Webinar Tuesday, talking about health and wellness and what is right for you. Thank you. Have a great evening. Goodbye.